How's it going, everybody? My name is Antonio, and I'm on the barbecue today on September 20th with Tara Christie, the CEO of Banyan Gold, a gold exploration and development company with assets in the Yukon, which is obviously in northwestern Canada. Who's not here with us today, though, is your financial advisor. This conversation is not going to include any recommendations to buy nor sell anything. It's going to be a casual talk between two individuals and just that. So for as far as you as a listener or viewer are concerned, this is going to be a general and impersonal conversation, as well as a conversation that will include no financial nor professional advice of any sorts. It's also definitely not a conversation that you want to use as independent research, because it's going to include a lot of forward-looking statements about uncertain events that may or may not happen in the future. I suggest, although I just told you not to take advice from people on the internet, I would still advise you to pause the video and read the full warning that is on your screen right now, because the mineral exploration and development and mining industry are among the highest risk industries out there. So you want to be educated going into this. If you care about your own money, please do more research by visiting setter.com and analyzing the company's official filings, as well as consult a professional investment advisor before taking your own decisions in the end. That all said, Banyan Gold trades on the TSX Ventures Exchange under the ticker symbol BYN, where about 285 million shares are outstanding, and with 23 million options and no warrants as of currently, that brings them into a fully diluted 308 million shares. With a market cap of about 91 million Canadian, that makes this a 32-cent stock with a 52-week high of about 50 cents, 51 cents, and a 52-week low of about 29 cents. Insiders own 7% of the company. Retail investors hold about 30%, and the rest is in the hands of either companies like Victoria Gold Corp and a Cisco, or institutions and high net worth individuals. After the last financing, which was, by the way, in December of last year, and it happened at 40 cents, the company now has a little over $11 million of cash, which they expect to help them fund the rest of this year's exploration, as well as next year's drilling. The main focus here, as far as I understand it, is to grow and de-risk the AurMac Gold Project, which recently grew, by the way, by over 50% and now contains an inferred resource of 6.2 million ounces at an average grade of, let's call it 0.6 grams per ton. Those pounds are spread across three main zones of mineralization that lie under a 173 square kilometer land package, which is about 30 kilometers away from Victoria Gold's Eagle Mine. And it's this is for the people who don't necessarily have a life. This is a structurally controlled intrusion-related type of gold mineralization that starts at surface, and it goes down to about 200 meters of depth, which is to say that if this thing ever becomes a mine, it's going to be an open pit mine. Banyan actually currently owns about 51% of the two projects that contain this resource, and they have the ability to buy up to 100% for a total of $4 million in cash or shares, and that would leave a 6% NSR royalty on it, with a bunch of other things on it that you can probably see on your screen right now. Banyan has two other projects, one of which is the Highland Project, not a focus project, but it is also located in the Yukon. It's 100% owned and contains 236,000 ounces in the indicated category and 288,000 ounces in the inferred category, both at around 0.85 grams per ton, so a little bit higher grade than their main focus right now. And then not too far off from the AurMac property, about 10 kilometers away, there lies an earlier stage project. It's called the Nitra Project, or the Nitra Project. This one is 100% owned as well, and it's almost well, I believe it's rather big, but I cannot read my handwriting here, so Tara, you can tell me how big that is. Company just completed its 2023 drill program, which costed them $10 million, and it gave them almost 25,000 meters of drilling. So again, loads to talk about, but to get to that point, I'll have to shut up already and welcome the CEO, Tara. Thank you for investing your time with me.
Yeah, thanks for that great intro, and lots of good information in that, and I can add to that, but you definitely got the nail on the head with AurMac is our main focus. We're really excited about de-risking it. We can see tremendous growth potential in the resource. From that 6.2 million ounces, we drilled another 25,000 meters this year. So, I think people can see there's potential for it to continue to grow. Great position. Our cash position today is just over $9 million, which is still a very strong position, which gives us, 5 to 6 million to spend for our program next year. And we are being a bit vague on what that is because we want to get our results back. We want to see have a bit of time to evaluate what's really going to add the most value for our shareholders. And then, announce what the program is with all our results in hand. So it's been a great year for Banyan in 2023. Our exploration, we think has been very successful, and we're teed up for 2024. So, I think in these uncertain times, looking at making sure that we've preserved our capital, as well as have a really clear game plan for 2024 is what's going to add the most value for our shareholders.
So how do you pronounce the name of your exploration project? Is it Nitra?
Nitra. And
Okay,
it's
cool.
the First Nation is a Northern Shoshone First Nation whose traditional territory that we work in. And that word means respect.
Okay,
So that's
good.
why we picked it.
But so 25,000 meters of drilling this year. How many meters of drilling did it take you again to get to the 6.2 million ounce resource?
Sure, we can look at it stepwise. When we went from 2020, we had 900,000 ounces. We drilled 40,000 meters to get to 4 million ounces. Then in 2022, then 2022, we drilled 50,000 meters, not ounces, in one year to get to the 6.2 million ounces.
Okay.
So, it's not always equal how much we add, but you can see that we have a track record of adding significant ounces for, 40,000, 50,000 meters. You can see how many ounces we added.
Yeah, right. So, well, 50,000 ounce, 50,000 meters. Now I'm making the same mistake. 50,000 meters added about 2 million ounces.
2.2.
Okay, 2.2 million ounces to that. Okay, sure. Well, obviously that's not indicative. I'm just thinking about ballpark numbers there. Well, let's maybe sort of take it back from the top, since this is the first time you and I are speaking. I've got a mandatory overview question. What are 3 things that you like about your company, and 3 things that you would, let's call it, improve on if you had a magic stick?
Well, I guess the company or the project, because they're 2 different things.
Let's talk about the company. Yeah.
Yeah, the company, we've got some great people. We have a really lean team, but very focused on adding shareholder value, technically covering all the areas we need, but we don't have a lot of extra. I'm pretty proud that 85% of the dollars we raise go into the ground. So our G&A is very low. I spent a lot of years running a private company. So for me, making sure that you're spending and you're accountable for your dollars is certainly important. So that's one thing I'm really proud of. The other one is how hard we work in our commitment to community and First Nations. That relationship super important to us, and it's genuine, which I think is really important for explorers in the modern day. It's where you get your social license, making sure you're approachable by community members so that you can communicate what you're doing and have them understand that. So that's another thing that I'm pretty proud of. You can't help but be excited about AurMac and how fast we've grown it. Having a deposit with this scale of mineralization, with infrastructure, roads, power, cell phone service even on it, those are huge advantages. So I think that's another part of being a company builder, is having a project which is not just an exciting prospect out in the middle of nowhere. That's right beside 2 mines that are actually operating, that have been permitted in the modern day. That's something that I really focused on when I was looking for a project for Banyan. Was it needs to be a project that, if there's the scale of resource there, can actually move forward into permitting and potentially development. Because that is a problem in many first world countries, is getting projects permitted.
And then you were going to tell me about 3 things that you would change if you had a magic stick. Oh gosh.
When I took over in 2016, there were already quite a few shares outstanding, and, had to finance and build a project. So, would you take over a company and build it, or do you start fresh? I guess is one thing. I'm pretty happy to have, added value for shareholders in this company, but that's always something, people say, you had 308 million shares outstanding, fully diluted. So that's something that, I get questions about. And if I could change, I had a magic wand and have had started at day X with AurMac, that would be, but that's not where we are, because I think that really shows the value that our team has added in the project. Another thing, a little bit higher grade, which, you know, we're continuing to look for in AurMac. We think we can see some higher grade, even in the sensitivity charts. You know, we picked a 0.2 and 0.25 cutoff grade because it gave us that 6.2 million ounces at 0.61. But if we'd have picked 0.5 and you add up from the sensitivity charts in the 43101, you can see that there's 4.5 million ounces at 0.95 average grade. So, you know, higher grade in the market, you know, maybe that, you know, and a third thing is probably hard to find, gold price. Or how about market appreciation for gold companies? You know, it's amazing. This is a great gold price. And you know, that's why I backed off when I just said that. Over $1,900. This is actually a really good gold price. Yes, we've had inflation, so costs are up, and you know, for gold mining companies, it looks like it's not as profitable. But I think we're going to see some companies come in with some pretty substantial profits at these gold prices, and so that disconnect between the juniors and you know, pre-developers and the gold price, you know, that's something that I'd love to see changed as well, because certainly it affects all of us.
Sure. That would have been like if you had troubles coming up with a third thing, that would probably be the third thing that I would mention, is that the fact that the market is, because of how the market is, it's valuing your 6.2 million inferred ounces at the current 90 or so market cap. That's less than $13 per ounce on an EV basis. And I know in situ valuations can be tricky; they can be misleading sometimes. So I try to stay away from them as much as possible. But even more surprisingly, to me at least, is that your stock actually fell 30% since you announced a nearly 50% increase in your resource. How come? Do you have any insights as to how is that really all just the market, or do you know something else that I don't?
Well, I look at many of my peers and they fell an awful lot more. So I think, you know, the resource actually confirmed what we had. But a lot of people, this is a really remarkably consistent deposit. So I do think, you know, people had been anticipating the resource before we put it out. And it's, you know, these are horizontal, they're remarkably continuous. It's a large area. So many of the analysts had already done their own math on where we were going to end up for a resource. You know, we did fairly well until about the end of July, when, you know, all stocks in the gold space and the explorer space really saw some pretty significant pressure. Not a lot of volume though, which I'm pleased to see that. Yeah, our share price is down a bit, but if you look at the volumes, it's not the large institutional shareholders that are likely selling. It's, you know, if we had large volumes and our price was down, I'd be way more worried than I am now. I'm pretty confident in our asset, and as you know, I'm a big shareholder, which I bought in the market because I'm not the first CEO, I'm the third CEO. So when I came on, I had to actually, you know, establish a position, because I believe any CEO that's running a company has to have real skin in the game. So now I'm about a 4% shareholder, which means I've put in over $1.5 million in the last 2 years alone. So that means I care about my share price. So I definitely wanted to see the share price go up more after the resource came out. But you know, my job now is just to continue to add value so that we can get share appreciation.
Did you that 4%, by the way, of your ownership, did you pay for all those shares, or is that in combination with what you've gotten as compensation?
Some of them were options, but if you notice, I've exercised all my options and held them. So that does include exercising options and hold them.
Yeah, but it's not free shares is what I'm getting after.
Oh, some of them were purchased on the market. I put $500,000 into one financing alone. Okay. You know, there's, you know, if you look at the SETI filings, I've up till recently, I've been participating in absolutely every financing at pretty significant amounts. So yeah, they are, well, they had 4 months hold, but now they are regular shares. And some of them were just purchased right on the market alongside everybody else.
Right. Okay. What I was also thinking about though is as to what the fall in stock price might be coming from, is that you were guiding, if I'm remembering previous interviews that you did correctly, between 6 to 8 million ounces. And after this, you sort of fell in the lower range of that. You got it. I mean, at least it was not unread, but was the market maybe disappointed of that?
Yeah, and you know, we could have picked a lower cutoff grade and had more ounces. And if you look at the sensitivity charts, you can see that the ounces are there, just the grade goes down. So, you know, that's kind of a neither here nor there. Like, is it I can see a clear pathway to get to 8 million ounces with drilling. Beyond that, again, you'd have to worry about grade, what the implications of getting a larger resource on. And there's always a risk when you're a CEO and people want you to guide, what do you see? And actually saying, here's kind of what we can see, particularly, when you don't know what the assays are. So without that, you can't tell what grade is, and you don't know how the pit shell is going to come together. So it's not only the grade, but it's then how it hangs together, because it's a pit constrained resource. So you might have some great holes and some great assays, but if they don't make it in the pit, they aren't included in that resource. So there's lots of things that you can't predict. And we know, we only drill to about 200 meters vertical depth. We know this mineralization goes to depth, and we know that there's some high grade that we end some of our holes in, and you can see that on some of the sections. And yet, so you can drill some higher grade, and if it's too deep, it's not going to make it in that, the first phase of an open pit mining operation. So there's quite a few risks in getting ahead of yourself and in saying kind of what the scale of your resource would be.
But I assume it's also hard to please everyone, because people want you to guide something. And if you don't, they're going to be upset with you for, not guiding anything. But if you guide too much, they're going to be upset with you for that. And if you guide too little, they're going to be, so it's probably hard.
It's a delicate balance, and every CEO, you have to make decisions on what you're going to set for targets. And, it's usually better to set low targets and then exceed them. But then people want to see realistic targets. If you always do that, then they anticipate that you're low anyway. So, and it's a very tough market right now for gold exploration stories. And with interest rates where they are, people can put their money in safe things and get 5%. It's hard to judge between different exploration companies. There are people that want to pay off their mortgages because they're paying 7, 8 or more percent. Or other debt that they have. So, there's lots of competition for capital out there. And because the sector is not getting a whole lot of love in the market, I'm actually pretty pleased that our share price has held in where it is. I'm pleased with some of the people that I know are buying stock, because that's a vote of confidence in terms of what they see for the quality of the project and the company. So, you kind of got to look at it from the who's buying, and are they quality names that are picking up the shares that are being sold?
Yeah. Well, in the online space, they call it are the weak hands being replaced with the strong hands. But here's why I don't want to be stuck too long talking about the price. Why I'm asking this, where I want to get to that, is because when I see a relatively big resource and a low market cap, well, it's not a low market, it's still almost $100 million, but it's low for the size of the resource, right? The first thing that pops into my otherwise empty head is an early takeout, right? And Victoria Gold, a company that's ran by your husband, so someone close to you, if I may say, they own over 11% of your company, and they I guess, operate what's now a producing mine. And there have been rumors that once Banyan crosses that 5 million ounce threshold, Victoria would have a very serious look at what you have. And so, I'm sure Victoria wouldn't mind expanding at the right price either. But then there's also Hecla, which borders on to the AurMac property. And I'm sure they aren't uninterested in going, expanding into that much gold. So have any of those conversations happened already? And how do you really manage the risk of being taken out prematurely at a too low of a valuation?
Well, that's what my job is, to make sure there's competitors for this asset. So there's various outcomes for any junior company. They can, at this stage, they can either advance it, de-risk it, go through permitting and build it like Victoria Gold did. I think our odds of that are fairly low. And yeah, you identified 2 potential competitors, Hecla beside us, Victoria Gold that already has a stake. 11.3 is not a blocking stake by any stretch of the imagination. So, there's certainly room in our register for another corporate. There's certainly the ability for somebody to outbid Victoria Gold, particularly with what's the challenges that they've had in their share price. So Hecla's made it pretty clear that they're interested in gold by purchasing ATAC, which are gold deposits north of and not at all in line with what they're currently working on the Yukon, which is the high grade Keno Hill Silver deposit. So, but there's been other investments in the Yukon. You look at all of the big companies over the last few years have made investments. We've got B2, which made, that premium investment to get 9.9 in Snowline. Certainly they're known for making investments and have a pretty strong growth trajectory. You've got companies like Kinross and Agnico that already have existing investments in other Yukon companies. There's a breadth of other companies, which it's my job to go out and make sure they know about this project, so that if there is somebody who makes them like that, that's just all corporate planning, right? If you're a CEO, you should be aware of that. And what the outcomes are, and be working towards making sure that you get as many eyeballs on your project as possible, so that should somebody make an offer, that there's other people that are ready to say, hey, wait a minute, I know about that project too, and I think that's too cheap. Maybe we should get in the ring. There hasn't been a huge amount of that happening quite yet. But I do think, personally, I think it's coming. That's a forward-looking statement, but that's exactly crosses my mind, and especially at these valuations. I know a few of my big shareholders would not be happy with even a premium at 33 cents.
But you don't think the 11% that Victoria has is scaring anybody off from taking a big position?
I think if it was 19.9 or over 19.9, it would be a little bit more prohibitive. Certainly over 19.9 would be challenging.
Okay.
I haven't heard that from anybody that I've talked to yet. But yeah,
sure.
Have to wait till them further down the road in any conversations to really know.
Okay. It's interesting you mentioned ATAC resources, because John, the CEO of Victoria, they does have a history, a recent one too, of a hostile all cash offer for ATAC, and then Hecla then outbid him, I believe. Was that? I don't think I have a question around that, but does that relate to the Banyan story in any way?
It's just an example of what can happen. Somebody makes a bid, somebody else can make another bid. Sometimes it keeps going and the ante goes up. We haven't seen a lot of it in the Yukon, so it's nice to see some M&A activity like that in the Yukon. Victoria could have chose to bid again. And I'm not aware of what their corporate decisions were around that. But you've got to pick a valuation. And they just purchased Brewery Creek. That's another example of M&A. So, maybe they thought, well, that's expensive. And those properties are remote. Yeah, they have lots of gold on them, but there are some challenges, both with the potential recovery of the gold, the access to it, and permitting. So maybe they were looking at the purchase of Sabre Gold, of Brewery Creek, and Gold Dome and Grew Creek, which they just purchased as a better use of their funds. Yeah,
that's a good point. If we were to, in the spirit of speculation and forward-looking statements, we were to think about which company this asset that you have right now makes more sense for, are you aware of any other way but tow milling ore that might work in the Yukon? A friend and I have been talking about something like a very long conveyor belt that, for example, moves ore from, let's say, AurMac to, again, speculating, but to the Eagle mine. I know of 100-kilometer long conveyor belt, so it's doable, but is that something that would work in the Yukon?
I think so in our metallurgy, we're looking at AurMac both as a heap leach scenario and a milling CIL. We know it's not refractory, so amenable to cyanide, but there are ranges, and different companies are familiar with different technologies and would build different things. So Victoria Gold would likely look at maybe, because they also might have Raven, which may be not heap leachable and high grade like that. You probably wanted to go to a mill. So I think they'd probably both look at both. Other companies that are potentially interested, they may not be familiar with heap leaching. So looking at both ranges is important. And to your point about the conveyor, I think the synergies, if it's a heap leach and it's forward looking, if it's a potential Victoria Gold you would put in your own heap leach pad, and you would maybe pipe the solution or ship the carbon to Victoria Gold, because that's a long way. It's not even 100 kilometers. It's 25 as the crow flies, if you can put something in as the crow flies. But, moving that material and looking at their permit and how much material they have, they've already used their space in their heap leach pads that they have now just for their own ore. So they probably wouldn't move it that far. And that's low grade bulk tonnage. That's a long way to move it. Again, there's other deposits in the area. That's an opportunity too. Somewhere in this district with all these deposits, there's going to be a mill that could be a district toll mill that might be somewhere, and it's probably going to be somewhere that has power and roads. So I think there are lots of ways to look at this. It's still early in the game. And one of the things we need to do is to do all the test work so that we can position this project and people can see the various ways that it could be mined. And then it's the economics that drive it, right? Once you get all the answers, you can trade off capital costs for NPV and what the various scenarios are. But there's a lot of work between where we are now with an inferred resource to actually what the mining project is, and then what the mining projects are, and what the best case scenario is. And people have opinions on that too, I'm sure. So, but having optionality and showing the range gives us more people who will look at our project.
Well, now that you've mentioned a central mill, you've actually put an idea in my head that there might be, and now we're going way off into the speculation realm, somebody even bigger than Hecla and Victoria looking to do some bigger stuff there and have one central mill. And well, that's an absolute possibility.
This is a district. Like, look at how much gold's been discovered. And we made the Powerline discovery in 2019. So, some of the Airstrip mineralization was known about before. Powerline was not. So this is a brand new discovery underneath a road and a highway. And we now have like 3.9 million ounces at it in 3.5 years. That shows you the potential of this belt. And then you have Snowline out there. And yeah, they found their intrusion. We haven't found our intrusion yet. We're still in the rocks above it or around it where the gold leaked out into. So there's a huge area between Snowline, there are 350 kilometers out to the east, and then, Sitka and Victoria Gold. What they're finding at their Raven, but these are all new discoveries in this belt of rocks. So you bet some of the larger companies are going to look and say, hey, here's a district. If we drew a 50-kilometer circle around us right now, we'd have 18 million ounces in resources. Never mind these prospects where we're seeing, like what Snowline has, this potential for very large deposits and higher grade. I think that is getting a lot of attention. People are like, how does this still exist and nobody's found it in the Yukon of Canada? I think that is going to drive a lot of excitement over the next few years.
Yeah. Well, but the Yukon is also big. I looked it up yesterday because I interviewed Scott from Snowline yesterday, and it's almost as big as France, which is kind of crazy to think about. How's the topography in your side of the Yukon, and maybe just the topography between AurMac and Victoria's Eagle versus topography between AurMac and Hecla's property?
Sure. So topography is really important for open pit mining because it goes to strip ratio. It goes to how difficult it is to transport ore. When you have big, tall mountains and lots of topography, it can be more expensive. Victoria Gold has been able to use gravity for them in their 1.2 kilometer long conveyor that actually generates electricity from taking the ore across the valley to the heap leach pad. So that they made that work for them. But a lot of times that doesn't work that way. It either results in a high strip ratio or a lot of cost to move the ore. We're really lucky in that we have really moderate topography, very low strip ratio. The mineralization starts right on surface, no big mountains to contend with. I think that will be an advantage. And of course, until we have a PEA, we can't demonstrate that economically. But as a miner and somebody that understands mining projects, it's also something that they look for. The other key thing is there's no big lakes or rivers right around our deposits. We're immediately on the adjacent to where the pit would be, which is important. Your water inflows to the pit. If it gets in the pit, you have to manage it, and that can be and treat it potentially. That can be huge costs. So that's That's really important. The other really exciting thing about our topography is that we have all these existing roads and disturbance on the property. In the Yukon, permitting new roads has been challenging, and you really have to work hard with communities and First Nations to understand them and before you go into permitting in order to make them happen. And sometimes they won't happen. So we're really fortunate to already have that and to already have power into our property. That's also a big problem. The power grid crossing our property and only 50 kilometers to the hydroelectric dam. And then this grid is actually connected to the broader Yukon grid. That's a huge advantage for us. So, Victoria Gold had to put in 42 kilometers of power line out along their road. It's a shorter distance, but they followed the road with the power line. So it's a little bit longer of a line. And again, they had more challenges because of the topography that they have. Now, Hecla's underground, so you can't directly compare. They don't have to put in the same strip ratio or consider the same strip ratio because they've already got portals that are existing, and they're putting in new declines and things to where the ore is. So topography matters, and where they put their tailings and their waste rock, and how challenging that is. But it's a different mining scenario, so it's really hard to compare it. And it's not a mill the type of mill which would take the ore from AurMac. I've been asked that, well, what's wrong with Hecla's mill? I said, well, it's really designed. Mills need to be designed for the type of ore and the concentrate that comes out of it. And their concentrate is very different than what would come out and be produced for AurMac.
It was one of my questions that in this, in the spirit of thinking, who does this property make more sense for? That would have been one of my questions. But so thank you for pre-answering it. But I also think I might have gotten a little bit ahead of myself with these things. So maybe I should put big red letters saying this is all forward-looking, and it is in the spirit of speculation and possibilities rather than probabilities or certainties. Because I assume that before any of that happens, you're probably looking to grow the deposit as much as possible, as well as, well, maybe not. Well, do you want to move the ounces up the NI 43-101 ladder, or are you thinking exit based on inferred ounces alone?
Give me a little time to tell you what the best answer is and that's partly one of the things that we're doing, some engineering modeling of the deposit now, so we understand where the high grade is. We're also looking at it geologically, structurally, understanding the higher grade. If you could put together a story where you've got indicated higher grade ounces, that might be received well in the market. Growing it to 8 million ounces beyond might be received well in the market, but it really depends what the market's looking for at that time. And right now, I think us taking a bunch of time to evaluate all those options and be prepared to execute when we think we'll get some appreciation for that. Meanwhile, we've got a ton of results coming back from this year. Our regional exploration this year, I'm really excited about the work we did on Nitra and Southern AurMac. We haven't even taken soil samples up to this year on Southern AurMac. Drilled less than 5% of that 173 square kilometers, and it's such moderate topography, as I talked about. There's not a lot of exposure, so we had to find AurMac or find Powerline and expand it by drilling because there's no exposure. There was no soil anomaly there. That's why we did the 100-meter space drill. So it is challenging property to explore, but if there's a potential for another discovery on the property, or to show that there's not only mineralization at AurMac with potential, but other places on our property that have that potential, I think that adds a lot of value for shareholders. So it was great for our team to actually get out and do some old-fashioned prospecting, grab some rocks, put them in a bag, get some soils. The Nitra property, there's a lot of historic and current placer mining out there, which is a great indication that gold came from somewhere around there. That gold known to property that Victoria Gold bought is actually kind of nestled in between our Nitra property as it kind of wraps around. So that's a known intrusion related gold deposit that's already there. And so where there's smoke, there's often fire. And so following up on some of that's also exciting. So, are we rushing to drill it out to indicated right now? No. Are we rushing to drill another 25,000 meters? Not yet. We want to get our results back. We want to look at what the market is saying and what our big shareholders are telling us, and then say, okay, what's the best use of the funds we have to add value in 2024? We know we're funded through 2024 for our program and for our G&A, and even if we need to into 2025. because that's a strong treasury for us. Our G&A burn rate's pretty low, so and we can turn it down. So we're taking a bit of time to be strategic and figure out what's going to be the most exciting and add the most value.
Was that placer mining that you mentioned? Was that by any chance Bernie Crift? Do you know that?
No, so Bernie Crift mined the high grade on Airstrip near us, but there's a bunch of other placer miners that are out in that area. One of which who works for us. He's an older guy who's very excited about telling us what he found out there and the placer mining out there. So,
okay, yeah, Bernie Crift's like my best friend. Only he does not know that yet. But I'll make sure to let him know one day. It's but so you've drilled.
I've known Bernie a long time too, right? Because I grew up placer mining, and he's a well-known prospector. And I'm rooting for him to be successful too on AurMac, but because certainly he was a big part of why it was known. The other one, Jim McFall, another longtime Yukon prospector whose estate had a royalty, which we purchased and established a scholarship for students in geology last year, which is great. There's a lot of people who've had a small amount touched this property but never got it over the hurdle. It really took us in 2019 to put together the model, which finally is going to unlock some value here.
Well, I guess having a whole lot of money helps too at times. You drilled, what did you drill this year? 107 holes, I believe, to be specific, right?
Yeah.
How many of those have already been assayed and released?
We have 69 more pending. Yeah. And so we did have forest fires near us. Yes, we had a prep lab on site, but we didn't bring our crews in when we were in an evacuation zone. So we actually slowed down our core logging and processing for a little bit. So it was just 2 weeks ago when we finally got the last core out of camp and shipped off to the lab.
Okay.
So it's going to be a little while, and that's all right. Doing it right and is more important.
Okay. And how long do you think it's going to take you once you start releasing them to have all 69 of them out?
Well, once we start getting them back, we tend to batch them so that it's not, there's a story that people can see rather than put out 3 or 4 holes at a time. When you have 6.2 million ounces, unless you get something that's 2 to 3 times your grade, it's not really, newsworthy. So a bit, when you have analysts covering you want there to be a meaningful enough news release that they write about it, rather than having, 3 or 4 holes that are the same as many of your other holes. So it's always a question, when do you start putting out results? But because these ones just shipped, the last ones might not get out till January. We just have to see how far behind the lab is, because they had a big gap. Lots of people didn't ship them samples, and then all of a sudden they got a whole whack of samples. So we're pushing though. I'll get them out as soon as we can, and once we receive them and we've had time to check them and properly make sure that they're put them in a format that we can tell what the story is and get them on a map and all the rest. Then we'll put them out.
Sure. Well, why I'm asking this, because your next exploration season starts in May, maybe beginning of June, depending on the weather.
We can start anytime. We've started in February.
Oh, wow.
If we're drilling, we could even restart now and drill. We've drilled to December 20th. So we've got the luxury of having a long exploration season. Do I think we're going to start in February, March? In this market, probably not. Probably May would be a good time to start. But again, because we have optionality, we don't need to constrain ourselves by committing right now. If we have something really exciting to follow up on, and the market's excited about gold companies, we've got the ability to turn on our exploration pretty much any time of the year, which is also pretty unique for a Yukon company.
It is. That's where I'm coming from. Because again, I spoke to Scott yesterday, and he told me, I believe May or June actually to October, sort of a 4 or 5 month period that you can drill. Yep. So that's interesting what you're telling me. Once you start drilling though, what is the next year? Is it's still going to be, is it going to be, and what's the split going to be? That's a better question. What's the split going to be between infill and step out drilling?
I don't have that answer for you yet. Wait till we get our results, and we'll come up with a plan that we think's going to be the best use of that dollars. I don't think right now infill, the market would appreciate really the real value of it. So yeah, it's nice for us to get all our results in hand before we rush to make a commitment that we need to follow through on. So we got lots of time before we drill. So we'll probably announce January, February, March sometime what our plans are, or start then. Just depends on what we think the best thing to do for our shareholders is. And we got a lot of technical work going on in the background. Geology, looking at structure, understanding where the high temperature minerals are. Having a little bit of downtime is actually really useful. Talking with the engineers about what do mining pits look like, and how should that guide our exploration. I think spending a bit of time, and we've been like flat out getting the ounces up over the last 3 years. Taking a little bit of time to really make sure we're using that huge database we now have to maximize value is a smart thing to do.
So I guess there's no sense in me asking you about whether you want to drill deeper holes.
Well, we know this mineralization goes to depth, so we end in high grade mineralization. Similar, like Victoria Gold, that system doesn't end. They're now drilling like 800 meters. Could this system go this deep? Absolutely, it could. Could it be higher grade as they get closer to the intrusive? Absolutely, that could happen, but it could also not get higher grade. So do we want to drill some deep holes? Yeah, but they're really expensive. So you want to make sure that you've positioned them well. We have a few ideas, and certainly there's always a few that your geos have on the map. I'd like to drill a deep hole here. I think there's 4 or 5 of them on the map, but have we drilled them yet? No. The more time we have and the more information we have, the better our targeting of those become.
When did you made the discovery in 2019, right?
2019 at Powerline, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So 2019, well, at the end of next year, that's been 5 years. Following the Lassonde curve, you would think that 2025 becomes a more reasonable year to maybe expect an M&I measured and indicated resource coming out, if that were to come out. Does that sound reasonable?
With a PEA, you can do a PEA on an inferred resource too. I think it really depends on the market. Are measured and indicated ounces valued that much more that it's worth the dilution of the share price to raise money to drill out indicated? Because there's you need quite a bit of capital to be able to drill out to indicated. So again, everyone's in a rush, but is that the right thing for shareholders to do that next year? I don't have the answer to that quite yet. And again, there's always the you look at Great Bear, they didn't even have a resource, and their valuation was and they were taken out. So you got to kind of weigh what is the best use of shareholders' dollars, and they're precious, because especially with our share price below our last financing, we want to make sure we're really spending them well.
Well, I wish our sector was that way, that Great Bear was more the rule, but it seems like it's more the exception as it is right now. So that, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting play to go to, I guess, for a discussion. I know you don't have too much time left though. So what else is happening next year besides the drilling? I see that you're still prospecting, so that's happening, I assume. What else?
Well, the technical work we're doing over the next couple of months is going to give us lots of insights on what we should do, where we're going to have the most value next year. Is it get out and drill on nitra on one of the areas where we've got some strong anomalies, where there's placer mining, where, or is it drill out some higher grade to indicated, or is it to, expand the deposit to grow more ounces? We're working on what that answer is. And all the options are there. Like, those are great options to have. And it's really, what's the choice? It would be terrible if you only had one option that, well, all we can do is add more ounces, or all we can do is drill it out indicated because the deposit's closed off. That's not where we are. So I'm pretty excited about what we're doing and how we're adding value, and our team's gonna spend a bunch of time over the next couple of months really evaluating that and putting together the proposals. If we do this, this is what we might add, And if we do that, and the more time we have, the better off we'll be able to have more information on, okay, so if we go out, what are our odds of success of greenfield exploration? How much information, what can we do to make our odds better? Should we do a little bit of geophysics? Should we do to help target? All of that makes, what we do next year more valuable. So, it's, most companies have all winter to make those decisions. And, we really haven't. We were flat out, got to our resource in May, June, and then got the technical report done, and then we were drilling again. And there's not been a whole lot of time to sit back and really evaluate what we have and prioritize what the most value add activities would be for next year based on all the technical data. So give us a little time and ask me that again a little later. See, then now you got to talk to me again, because I'm pretty excited about our options for 2024 and the fact that we have great options, which not very many companies have, and we're financed for it. So stay tuned. Banyan is, just getting fired up. And I think 2024 is going to be a good year for many gold companies, particularly if they have cash in the bank.
Well, let's hope that last part of the sentence is true, because my portfolio can definitely use that as well. But I'm
an optimist, that's you wouldn't be in this business if you weren't. So
true. So, but you have the money. What about permits, fish, birds, mammals? Everybody happy up there?
Oh, we're in great shape for our permits. Our exploration permit is very robust, gets us through 2028. That is another key thing that Banyan has, which corporates will look at, maybe the retail market doesn't appreciate, but because we're right beside Hecla and Victoria Gold, we have a huge database of baseline environmental data, which, really advances. That's millions of dollars and years of time. Lots of companies get their resource and then they start their 3 years of baseline data, or a corporate takes them over and has to start that. We're not in that position because of that wealth of data that we have. And that's partly why I brought on Kai most recently. He's been working for various companies in the Yukon, including Hecla, Snowline, Fireweed, leading their baseline environmental through Insero, which is one of the largest environmental consulting firms in the Yukon and the most well-regarded. And then he also worked for Alexco and did their permitting and First Nations agreement, and was there for quite a few years. So he adds that wealth of expertise on that side of the equation. And I think the value of that, because corporates not only look at the ounces, but they look how fast can they put it into production. And with Snowline B2, it's already put where they think Snowline might fit in their production profile and their schedules. And all the big companies do. Yes, you get to actually say, if you acquire something that here's X number of ounces that we've added, aren't we great? We're replacing our resources or reserves, if they're reserves that they're buying. And then they have to actually say, okay, but when would we actually put those in our schedule to actually produce those ounces? So having a faster timeline to production and permittability is another advantage that we have over many of our competitors.
Sure. Okay. I guess one last thing. There's over 500,000 ounces in Highland. You're not saying much about that. Is that for sale right now? Is that something you could use to sell in and finance?
The right price. I'm not, I used to think that we would sell it to, and we would for the right party, and it's teed up. And, we aren't focusing on it because we can add ounces at AurMac for $7 an ounce. My guess is it's probably between $15 and $20 per ounce at Highland if our success rate continues with what we think is there. So I think there's lots of potential there. It's a big property. It's a little bit more challenging part of the Yukon to permit right now. So I don't think doing work on 2 projects in this market would get any value. Even focusing on one project, you have a hard time getting value. So but because it's oxide with 86% recoveries right on surface, if somebody was to buy AurMac, there are synergies with it. You could again have a small heap leach down there and ship the carbon, or there's things that you could do that would have synergies with if you had another gold mine in the same territory. But again, our holding costs are really low. We've done lots of work. It's permitted down there. So should somebody come knocking on our door, we'll certainly talk to them about it. But we're not under a lot of pressure. It's not burning a hole in our pocket because it's costing us a lot of money. Really, I think it's a value add for corporates Um,
Well,
but
but I assume, yeah, if you value it at 15 or whatever, 20, that could even bring like $10 million. It would be nice if that got sold right as the gold market takes off, and then you don't have to come back into the markets and you can finance another program. That would be obviously an ideal case scenario. So that's where I'm coming from
yeah,
with
yeah,
this. So
no,
yeah.
I think about that, but again, you want to put it in good hands, and you got to find somebody that's got the money to buy it.
Hmm.
So
Sure, sure. I'm aware that I'm overstaying my welcome and that you have to go. Is there something that you came here hoping to talk about, but I'm failing to bring up?
no, I really appreciated the time, and it's fun to talk about the projects and all the potential scenarios out there, and look forward to coming back and talking to shareholders and to you again when we get a little closer to having our 2024 plans and our metallurgy. That's we've promised to have a flow sheet by fourth quarter. I think that'll be an important catalyst for us as we show the market what the processing options are here, and then that might be a segue into us putting some economics around it. Might be a catalyst for understanding where to drill it out to indicate all those things we talked about. I think that'll really bring it all together.
Well, I'll be happy to catch up again when you have that information. So yeah, thank you so much for investing your time with me today.
Yeah, thank you.